Most people think tariffs are just numbers, taxes, bureaucracy, something distant from their lives. But that's exactly why they never saw this coming. In 2025, when Donald Trump returned to the presidency, he didn't just raise tariffs. He fired the loudest economic warning shot the world had seen in decades. A savage 125% tariff on Chinese imports. That wasn't about trade deals or balancing numbers. That was a global message. The rules just changed. And I make the rules now. It was the kind of move that instantly shook the global supply chain, terrified investors, and left China with two choices: surrender or strike back. And here's where it gets crazy. China didn't just respond. They escalated the fight to a whole new battlefield. Sure, they retaliated with 84% tariffs. But their real move? It was far more dangerous. They attacked America's greatest weapon, the dominance of the US dollar. Quietly, smartly, and with surgical precision, China started pushing the digital yuan, the ECNY, into global trade. This wasn't just about winning a trade war. This was about changing how the entire world moves money, builds power, and survives in the new economic order. And today, you're about to discover exactly how this battle exploded and why the world will never be the same again. You know, when history talks about game-changing moments in global politics, April 2025 is going to stand tall. Trump didn't come back to the White House to play nice. He came swinging hard. A jaw-dropping 125% tariff on Chinese goods? That's not just tariffs. That's a declaration of economic war. And honestly, that shook the entire global supply chain to its core. It wasn't just numbers on paper. It was power in action. Now think about it. Tariffs had always been around, sure. But this level? This was unheard of. Trump wasn't just setting tariffs. He was throwing down a challenge to China like never before. It was retaliation in its rawest form. And while some cheered for America's boldness, others, especially businesses, were sweating bullets. Because when two giants clash, everyone in the global supply chain feels the heat. But let me tell you something. This wasn't just about punishing China. Nope. Trump was cooking something way bigger. What came next was a master move to isolate China economically, change the game rules, and force the world to pick sides. And oh, trust me, that changed everything. Before we get into that next crazy twist, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, this story only gets wilder. See, after landing the first punch with those wild 125% tariffs, Trump wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Instead of going full isolationist, he flipped the script. He offered a 90-day tariff suspension for over 75 non-retaliating countries. Smart, right? It was classic Trump. Slap China, but sweet-talk everyone else. He even threw in a universal 10% tariff for other nations just to keep them on their toes. This was what you call economic isolation in action. The goal? Push China into a corner while building what some called a soft global supply chain alliance. And while it might sound like trade war strategy 101, it was pure genius. Trump was basically saying, hey world, stick with me, or stay stuck with China's retaliation mess. And let me tell you, that strategy hit Beijing right where it hurt. But China? Oh, China doesn't blink that easily. If Trump thought tariffs and global alliances would scare Beijing off, he was about to get a very loud wake-up call. Because retaliation was coming, and it was coming fast, fierce, and way more savage than anyone expected. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where the trade war turns into a full-blown economic street fight. China wasn't just upset, it was furious. In record time, Beijing hit back with 84% tariffs on U.S. imports. And just to spice things up, they blacklisted American giants like Apple, Tesla, and Qualcomm. That's right. We're talking about cutting the very heart out of America's tech pride. Retaliation, my friend, had a new face. This wasn't just about tariffs anymore. China was showing the world it was ready to weaponize its own market power. And if you thought the global supply chain was stressed before, this move practically broke it in two. Multinationals started panicking. Nobody likes a trade war, especially one where your company is caught in the crossfire. But here's the real kicker. China had a card up its sleeve that very few expected. Something that could shake the entire foundation of global trade. Something called the Digital Yuan, or ECNY. And trust me, its role in this fight? Oh, that's a plot twist you need to see. Enter the ECNY, China's digital currency weapon. While the world was busy watching tariffs fly back and forth, China was busy setting up its next big move. Promoting the digital yuan in regional trade wasn't just innovation. It was straight-up de-dollarization warfare. China was telling the world, we don't need the US dollar to survive. Weaponizing technology had always been part of the playbook. But using currency to challenge America's financial dominance? That was next-level bold. China was slowly building a network of trade partnerships ready to use ECNY instead of dollars. And this wasn't just about showing off. It was about creating real economic isolation from U.S. influence. And if that doesn't sound wild enough, the repercussions of this move were about to shake global markets to their knees. What happened next? Oh, it hit hard, straight to Wall Street's gut. When Wall Street wakes up and sees 860 points wiped off the Dow Jones in a single day, yeah, people start paying attention. This wasn't just some little trade spat anymore. This was the trade war nightmare becoming very, very real. Stocks of companies tied to the China market, Apple, Nvidia, Boeing, fell like dominoes. Commodity prices skyrocketed. Soybeans, oil, liquefied natural gas. If it moved across the global supply chain, it got way more expensive overnight. Suddenly, JP Morgan was warning of a 0.6% drop in global GDP. And in the background, you could hear investors muttering one word over and over: recession. But believe me, this was just the surface tension. The real story was happening behind the scenes, far from the stock tickers and Wall Street panic. In boardrooms across Asia and Europe, companies were making moves that could change global trade forever. What happens when giants clash? Smaller economies start dodging debris. Vietnam, Mexico, Thailand, they suddenly became the hottest names in the global supply chain. Companies were scrambling to escape the chaos of US-China tariffs and retaliation battles. But building new supply chains isn't like flipping a switch. It's messy, slow, and expensive. Meanwhile, BRICS nations were quietly watching, plotting, and accelerating their dream: a multipolar financial system. Forget just surviving the trade war. BRICS wanted to rewrite the rules entirely. They started pushing local currencies, internal payment systems, and yes, even more ECNY adoption. And this movement? Oh, it was only gaining steam. Because what BRICS was building next had the potential to break the old-school, dollar-dominated system like never before. Let me tell you, this part of the story feels like something ripped straight from the future. BRICS wasn't playing small anymore. China led the charge, accelerating efforts to create a whole new financial world without the US dollar. We're talking local currencies, independent payment systems, and the full weaponization of de-dollarization. Think about it. Just a decade ago, nobody thought a parallel financial system could exist. But now, it was real. The global supply chain was being rewired. Payment networks were being rebuilt. And the balance of power? Oh, it was shifting fast. But this wasn't just a BRICS versus USA thing. Nope. At the heart of it all was an ancient rivalry. Two superpowers clashing over more than just tariffs. In the next chapter, it dives deep into geopolitics, strategy, and the raw hunger for global dominance. See, here's what most people miss about this story. It's never just about tariffs or trade war headlines. It's about two visions for the future of the world colliding: the US and China battling over technology, finance, security, and influence. This was a geopolitical chess match at its finest. Both Trump and Xi Jinping knew what was at stake. Neither could afford to blink, because to their own people, any sign of weakness wasn't just bad politics, it was unacceptable. Economic isolation, retaliation, global supply chain disruption. These were just the weapons in a much deeper war. And the question everyone's still asking: how does this end? Does it end? Or are we just seeing the opening moves of a conflict that could shape the next century? Stick around, because trust me, the answers to those questions are as wild as the journey itself. Most people go through life believing that the world economy moves on autopilot, that things like tariffs, trade wars, or de-dollarization are problems for politicians or billionaires to worry about. But now you know better. Now you've seen what really happens when two superpowers collide, and how their fight goes way beyond numbers. It's a silent war for control over money, technology, and influence. And whether people realize it or not, we're all part of this game. And the best part? This is just the beginning. What you learned here today is only a tiny piece of a much larger puzzle. There are endless stories like this, moves happening behind closed doors, shaping your future, your money, your opportunities. The difference is, most people will never know. But you're already one step ahead. And if you want to stay there, If you want to think like the few who really understand how power works in this world, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with me. Because trust me, we're just getting started.